After having passed away for 3 years, the elderly woman unexpectedly received the chance to return to the living world to visit her family for 3 days. But what puzzled her was that her daughter, who was supposed to be a professor in the United States, was now living in a rural village in Korea. She discovered that her daughter was living in her own old house and had even opened a small restaurant next to it. When customers came to dine, her daughter would serve them tea and water, then rush to the kitchen to prepare the meals. Watching her daughter skillfully cook, Park Bok-ja could hardly believe what she was seeing, because during her lifetime, her daughter Bang Jinju never knew how to cook and had never once made a meal for her. Park Bok-ja was confused about why her daughter had given up being a university professor and returned to the countryside instead.
난 너처럼 살지 말라고 내 쎄빠지게 공부시켜놨더니 내가 이 꼴을 보려고 아이고 그 세월을 좋게 다겠다 이년아.
When the restaurant ran out of sesame oil, Bang Jinju rode her bicycle to the village's small supermarket. The auntie at the supermarket was Park Bok-ja's close friend during her lifetime and, like Park Bok-ja, had always hoped Bang Jinju would live a better life. Therefore, she disliked seeing Bang Jinju let herself go like this and was unwilling to sell her the sesame oil. However, after Bang Jinju's insistent coaxing, the soft-hearted auntie finally brought out the sesame oil.
갈게요.
아이고 복자야, 네 보고 있나?
그래 보고 있다 할 맛이야.
아이고 저거라 짧겠고.
After returning home, Bang Jinju lit a fire in the stone stove at the entrance of the house. Watching Bang Jinju roast coffee beans by the stove, Park Bok-ja's thoughts were pulled back to several years earlier. At that time, she had built a new stove at the entrance and asked Bang Jinju to find time to come home for some grilled pork belly.
네 언제 한번 내려올래? 그 같이 삼겹살 좀 꺼먹게.
엄마 나 수업 들어가.
아 그래 맞다 바쁘겠네 참.
After Bang Jinju refused, she asked Bang Jinju when she was leaving for America, but Bang Jinju did not want to answer and simply replied, "I'm busy." Before hanging up, she could not understand why her own daughter would treat her so coldly. This question troubled her throughout her later years, and even after death, she still did not know where things had gone wrong. Bang Jinju had not been close to her since growing up and rarely returned to her hometown to visit. Even on the day she died, Bang Jinju did not come in time to see her one last face. The Bang Jinju of the past had clearly been so resistant to returning home. Yet now she had given up a bright future to come back here. She still could not help herself and began chattering beside Bang Jinju.
야 지금 노래가 나오라 이 문제 가시나 야 노래도 못하는 게 이거야. 응?
아우 기간지러워.
누가 더 욕하나?
그래 욕했다 이거나. 들리나? 문제 가시나.
In the evening, Bang Jinju drank an entire bottle of alcohol and then fell into a heavy sleep. While Bang Jinju slept deeply, Park Bok-ja sat quietly beside her, watching. But in the middle of the night, Bang Jinju suddenly began breathing heavily and pushed herself up from the floor bedding. She rushed out of the house, ran outside, and then kept running frantically all the way to the village entrance.
내가 미치겠다 엄마. 내가 엄마 때문에 못 살겠다.
The next day, Bang Jinju drove to a hospital in the city. Listening to Bang Jinju's conversation with the doctor, Park Bok-ja finally learned that her daughter was suffering from depression, and the one who had caused Bang Jinju's illness turned out to be Park Bok-ja herself, who had already been dead for 3 years.
어떤 생각들이 주로 올라와요?
엄마 생각.
어머니의 어떤
날 왜 버렸을까?
As Bang Jinju's words fell, Park Bok-ja's thoughts traveled back many years. Back when Park Bok-ja and her husband divorced, she had raised Bang Jinju alone in the countryside. In order to give Bang Jinju a better growth environment, she placed her daughter in the care of her younger brother who was a teacher. She visited Bang Jinju every half-month and also handed over all her monthly salary to her brother. For more than 20 years after that, the mother and daughter had been living separately. Now she finally understands that Bang Jinju, who was still young at the time, felt abandoned by her mother. It turned out that the decision made for the daughter's good actually left a shadow in her heart. After leaving the hospital, Bang Jinju went to pick up her friend who had come to visit her. She brought her friend home, and during casual conversation, the friend asked her, "How long are you going to stay in the countryside?" But Bang Jinju answered, "I am punishing myself. Back then, in order to stay away from my mother, I chose to apply for a transfer to a university in the United States for a job. I went to the United States without my mother as I wished, but one day, I suddenly received news of my mother's death. 2 days later, I returned to my hometown for the funeral, and until the end, I did not see my mother before her death. Now I often think that as a daughter, I was really heartless. If I had not gone to the United States at that time, my mother's later years would not have been so lonely, and after death, she would not have had to stay in the freezer for 2 more days."
도망간 게 아니라 네 교수질하러 간 거야. 응? 아, 나 참 답답해 돌아버리겠다 참말로.
Time came to evening. Bang Jinju and her friend together made dumplings at the restaurant. Different from the usual meat filling, Bang Jinju made dumplings with diced radish filling. The friend asked her why she used radish as filling, and Bang Jinju talked about an incident from her childhood. When Bang Jinju was young and still living with her mother, Park Bokja always came home very late every day because she was busy. Park Bokja had no money and could not afford meat, so she made radish-filled dumplings for Bang Jinju. Life was hard at that time, but in Bang Jinju's memory, it was the happiest period. In the evening, during casual conversation with her friend, the friend brought up high school matters, saying, "In high school, you and I were both poor students. Why did your grades get better and better later?"
고1 땐가? 엄마 때문에 약 올라서.
When Bang Jinju was in her first year of high school, Park Bokja remarried a man who was also divorced. One day after school, Bang Jinju suddenly received a call from Park Bokja, and Park Bokja asked her to come home for a meal. She went to her mother's new home, and Park Bokja prepared a full table of food for her. But just as Bang Jinju was about to start eating, suddenly the sound of the door opening was heard, and the stepfather returned home with 2 children. The 3 who were originally on vacation came back early, which made Park Bokja feel uneasy.
학교 일찍 끝난다. 걔가 밥이나 좀 먹고 가라고.
나도 졸라 배고픈데 라면 돼요? 지금?
대식이니 방으로 들어가.
라면 말고 딴 건 없나?
밥 먹지. 반찬 많은데.
들어가!
The tuition for Bang Jinju's high school had always been covered by the stepfather, and she maintained the most basic courtesy in front of him. However, the stepfather did not like Bang Jinju coming to his home, and the words he spoke were full of disgust and sarcasm.
많이 먹고 가라. 누가 다 먹어 이걸? 남기면 다 음식 쓰레기지. 하여간 손은 커가지고 참.
After leaving the stepfather's home, Park Bokja packed up the table of food and chased after her. Bang Jinju asked her mother why she did not go on the trip together, and Park Bokja simply explained that she did not like flying. But Bang Jinju understood in her heart that her mother's status in the stepfather's home was almost no different from that of a servant. While waiting for the bus at the bus stop, Bang Jinju confessed her inner thoughts to Park Bokja, saying, "I have reached the age where I can work and earn money. I can take responsibility for supporting you, and then we can live together." But Park Bokja did not agree. For children from poor families, going to university is one of the few opportunities to change their fate. She did not want Bang Jinju to become like her, a bottom-tier woman who could only do manual labor. After listening to her mother's words, Bang Jinju got on the bus without looking back. She did not want her mother to suffer for her, but her mother kept sacrificing for her endlessly. She just wanted to live with her mother, but her mother always pushed her away heartlessly. On the other side, Park Bokja, who was doing housework, did not know that her sacrificial love actually hurt Bang Jinju. Her intention was for her daughter to have a better future, but her daughter became even more convinced that she had been abandoned by her mother. This misunderstanding grew deeper due to lack of communication and became an invisible barrier between mother and daughter. So when taking graduation photos at university, Bang Jinju did not let Park Bokja stand by her side.
그래도 그게 엄마랑 같이 찍은 유일한 사진이다.
The next morning, Bang Jinju took her friend to the village's back mountain. Today was Park Bokja's birthday. She brought some fruits and wine, and sat quietly in front of the grave to celebrate Park Bok-ja's birthday. Her friend praised her as a filial daughter, but Bang Jinju felt she was not even qualified, because since she became sensible, she had never spent a birthday with her mother, nor had she ever cooked a birthday meal for her mother.
야, 내가 언제 그딴 거 받았냐? 응? 근데 그런 거 생각하지 말고 빨리 미국으로 들어가든가 해야 할까, 이가? 응? 나 진짜 답답해 미치겠다, 정말.
At this point, Park Bok-ja understood that Bang Jinju's life had fallen into a prolonged dampness because of her death. This dampness was filled with endless self-blame, and Bang Jinju seemed unable to escape from it. That afternoon, Bang Jinju drove her friend to the station. Her friend failed to persuade Bang Jinju to leave. She still stubbornly stayed in the village. After seeing her friend off, she passed through the waiting room, and her favorite music suddenly started playing in the hall. When she heard this familiar melody, she suddenly realized that her mother must have often heard this song while she was alive. This song was her phone ringtone, and every time her mother called her, she would hear it too. Perhaps because she was busy with work, or perhaps out of resistance, she would ignore her mother's calls every time. Back then, Park Bok-ja always waited in vain for Bang Jinju's return calls, and she could only spend her days and nights in loneliness. But she still insisted on calling Bang Jinju, and while waiting, she listened to the song over and over again. On the way back to the village, Bang Jinju saw the sign of a fast food restaurant by the roadside. She ordered an ice cream at this fast food restaurant and stared at it in silence for a long time. Her thoughts drifted back to several years ago, when Park Bok-ja suddenly came to the city where Bang Jinju worked. Park Bok-ja brought a lot of cooked dishes, but Bang Jinju did not welcome her mother's uninvited arrival.
아니, 원룸 사는 거 뻔히 알면서 이렇게 바리바리 싸갖고 와가지고 우리가 한 입을 덮고 잘 만큼 살강 사이야?
엄마랑 딸이 마주 앉아서 밥 한 끼도 못 먹나? 하룻밤 이런저런 얘기 나누면서 잠도 같이 못 자나?
그럼 다른 엄마들처럼 그렇게 키우지 그랬어?
After leaving Bang Jinju's home, Park Bok-ja walked for a long time on unfamiliar streets. She went into a fast food restaurant and ordered the cheapest ice cream. Sitting down by the window with the ice cream, she then asked the staff to help her send a text message. Park Bok-ja did not notice that Bang Jinju had actually followed her out and had been watching her from outside the fast food restaurant all along. The text message that appeared on Bang Jinju's phone was from her mother, who did not know how to type on a phone. That night, Bang Jinju did not take her mother back to her home, but instead let her mother sit alone in the fast food restaurant all night. For various reasons, she did not step forward, and not apologizing to her mother became a regret she buried deep in her heart. Now, she bought an ice cream that her mother had once bought and sat by the window just like her mother did. At this moment, she really wanted to know what was going through her mother's mind that entire night.
니 다 봤나? 다 보고 있었나? 나는 다 잊어버렸는데 뭐하러 기억하고 사는 별것도 아닌 거를. 엄마들은 다 잊어본다. 속상한 거, 서운한 거 다 잊어본다.
In the evening, Bang Jinju returned home, and the aunt who ran the small supermarket in the village suddenly came to visit. The slightly tipsy aunt told Bang Jinju many things about Park Bok-ja's youth, saying, "Your mother loved reading when she was young, and she even said she wanted to work in a big company when she grew up, but her family always made her do farm work, so she stopped studying after junior high school. Later, she went to work in a factory, and the money she earned was used to support her younger brother through university. She married an unreliable husband, and after divorcing, she raised you while working odd jobs. Those years were very hard for her, and the money she earned was no longer enough to keep you in school." Later, a matchmaker approached Park Bok-ja, telling her that a divorced man had taken a liking to her. That man was willing to bear the cost of your education, even covering the expenses for studying abroad. However, that man had one condition: she absolutely could not bring her child into the marriage, because the man had 2 children of his own. He was worried that Park Bok-ja would favor her own daughter after marrying him. To allow you to continue your studies, she ultimately married that man.
학교 선생하는 남동생한테 니 맡기는 게 훨 낫다고 생각했지. 그래, 복자도 딸 때나 놔놓고 한평생 외롭게 살았다.
Bang Jinju listened quietly. She actually knew all these things. After her mother's death, her uncle had told her about it, and she had long understood that her mother did not abandon her. Everything her mother did was out of necessity. It was just that she, being young at the time, did not understand. Now, 3 years after her mother's passing, she wants to apologize but no longer has the chance. After the aunt left, Bang Jinju returned to her room and flipped through the diary Park Bok-ja had written while alive.
전화를 안 받는다. 바쁜가? 눈이 많이 왔다. 하얗다. 진주가 보면 좋다 했을 텐데. 니를 낳고 키우고 나는 네가 좋은데 나는 또 네 때문에 마음이 아프다. 내가 왜 싫은 진주야?
니 일 때문에 주저앉았나? 응? 나 뭐 하려고 이걸 써가지고 네 발목을 잡았었고.
Seeing Bang Jinju trapped deeper and deeper in regret, she understood that only she could unravel her daughter's emotional knot. She went outside and summoned the underworld messenger, begging them to let her meet Bang Jinju one more time. She could not bear to see Bang Jinju stuck in the mire of self-blame, and only wanted her to forget the past and live well.
내 딸한테 한다고 다 한다고.
At Park Bok-ja's earnest plea, the underworld messenger agreed to let her see her daughter one last time. However, doing this had a side effect. Afterward, all memories of her daughter would be erased from Park Bok-ja's mind. After hearing this, Park Bok-ja was as if struck by lightning. She sat dazed for a long time, but ultimately still decided to meet. This was the last thing she could do for her daughter, and also her final act of self-sacrificing devotion.
우리 진주 웃고 사는 게 더 중요하지.
엄마. 어디 갔다 이제 왔어?
네 엄마 기다렸나? 응?
엄마, 조금만 기다려. 내가 미역국 끓여줄게. 잡채도 있단 말이야. 얼른 먹어봐봐.
네 왜 이런 생각을 다 했노? 응? 엄마 생일상 차려줄 생각.
내가 진짜 해보고 싶었던 거야. 엄마는 몰랐겠지만.
많이도 몰랐겠지만은 네한테 생일상 한번 받아보는 게 엄마 소원이었다.
다행이다. 미국에
진주야, 나는 너를 꿈에라도 버린 적이 없다. 네가 공부를 많이 해서 엄마랑은 다른 인생을 살기를 바랬을 뿐이다.
알지. 엄마, 내가 속이 좁아서 그래. 봐봐. 엄마 덕분에 내가 이만큼이나 됐어. 엄마가 내놓은 엄마의 꽃 같은 인생을 내가 대신 살고 있는 거라고, 엄마. 그걸 알면서도 엄마를 혼자 외롭게 만들었지. 미안해, 엄마. 고마워, 엄마.
고맙다이.
At the end of the story, the mother and daughter, who had not slept together for many years, once again fell asleep in each other's arms. Park Bok-ja, just as she did when younger, gently patted Bang Jinju's back, soothing her to sleep. Seeing the look of happiness on Bang Jinju's face, Park Bok-ja knew her daughter had emerged from the dampness. At this moment, she was also utterly convinced that from now on, Bang Jinju would return to the sunlight and start her new life afresh. At the same time, the underworld messenger began erasing the memories from Park Bok-ja's mind, as scene after scene was wiped from Park Bok-ja's thoughts. A story about a mother and her daughter thus came to an end.